This Week with Bob Mueller on News 2.
This week,
to me, the Metro Council's refusal to support hosting the Republican National Convention is a great example of the problem that we have.
Republicans want to cut the Metro Council in half. Democrats see the move as revenge for Nashville not offering to host the GOP National Convention.
People think it's a Republican-Democrat thing. It really isn't. Even with Metro, when you agree, you can't work with them. They don't want to work with you.
Republicans claim it's about efficiency, not retribution. Democrats don't buy it.
To the extent this GOP supermajority or the governor want to try to get revenge on Nashville for whatever reason they've dreamed up today, they'll certainly, if they want to do that, that's their prerogative.
The Tennessee General Assembly did get started this week, and its plate is full.
And we've been negotiating in good faith, and the negotiations began to break down, and so we withheld our votes to say, look, we're not going to move forward with the vote on Speaker, because I was never a Kevin McCarthy person. I like Kevin.
Tennessee's newest Republican Congressman Andy Ogles angers Kevin McCarthy, who campaigned for Ogles, votes against McCarthy for Speaker, then after a heated discussion, votes for McCarthy, all before being sworn in.
And the amount of vacancies that we have is untenable. You can never even imagine that. DCS was already kind of running on fumes, and now, I feel like there's nothing left in the tank.
As a new report shows, children in Tennessee are dying by child abuse with families that DCS knew had a history of abuse. More in our This Week cover story.
I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office.
Government documents are found at then Vice President Biden's private office, and before the investigation begins, another small number of government documents are discovered. Republicans claim Trump and Biden are being treated differently on the same issue. Hello again, and welcome to another edition of This Week. The legislature returns for a new session here in Tennessee. Tennessee's newest congressman, Republican Andy Ogles, infuriates Speaker candidate Kevin McCarthy, who campaigned for Ogles by voting against McCarthy. The crisis at the Department of Children's Services grows with increasing deaths of children under DCS care. We begin with the fight between the Metro Council and the state legislature, ignited by the council not offering to host the GOP convention.
Metro Council is inefficient. You can't have 40 people in a body running a city where you only get 3,000 people to elect you.
Republican lawmakers filed a new bill Monday to limit the size of Metro Councils in Tennessee to 20 members. 40 members now. Nashville's Metro Council is the only one large enough to be impacted by the measure.
I do think that they've lost their way, and they really don't represent the people of Nashville. They represent the Democratic Party and all the ideals it stands for.
But Democrats say it's just the latest move from a Republican supermajority flexing its power.
This GOP supermajority has shown time and time again that it's not afraid to overstep into local affairs. That should scare the daylights out of every Tennessean.
Lamberth's bill comes after the council voted against hosting the Republican National Convention in Nashville.
To the extent this GOP supermajority or the governor want to try to get revenge on Nashville for whatever reason they've dreamed up today, they'll certainly, if they want to do that, that's their prerogative. I would urge them to exercise a little caution before they set that dangerous precedent.
But Sexton argues this issue goes beyond partisan practices.
People think it's a Republican-Democrat thing. It really isn't. Even with Metro, when you agree, you can't work with them. They don't want to work with you. And that's fine if that's the route that they want to go. But the state has an obligation to oversee local government.
Nashville leaders argue any local government body changes should be left up to the cities that will be impacted.
We've seen time and again Nashville residents have rejected various opportunities to reduce the size of council, and I think if we are going to do it, we should do it as a city, not have the state sort of inflict it upon us.
We're happy with our council member. In part, you've got a lot of issues like zoning, and this gives the maximum amount of local attention with this many members to things like zoning. So as we grow, that's an important thing to remember, to have your local voice represented in your neighborhood on issues like zoning, and Is it the right choice to deny the public in Nashville of that extra voice?
Bad blood between the legislature and Metro Council came to a head last summer when the council voted not to approve applications to bring the Republican National Convention to Nashville in 2024 and 2028. While GOP lawmakers deny that is the only reason they want to cut the council in half, it certainly was the match that lit an already explosive powder keg of a relationship between the Metro Council and state legislature.
To me, the Metro Council's refusal to support hosting the Republican National Convention is a great example of the problem that we have. And if they have a problem with the Tennessee General Assembly or the composition of the Tennessee General Assembly, take it up with the people of Tennessee.
Unlike our peers in the General Assembly, every member of the Metro Council runs without a party affiliation. It's a nonpartisan body, mayor, vice mayor, Metro Council. In fact, it's because of state legislation that we have a partisan school board right now. Those used to be nonpartisan races too.
Tennessee teachers have another chore this school year because of a new state law. It's part of a nationwide push by conservative activists to ban books they don't like. Here's News 2's Adam Mincer.
There's a new assignment for Nashville teachers. Scan all their books by the end of the year so they can be posted to the school website.
Teachers do not have the extra time to go through and scan all the books that are in their class.
But this doesn't just take away time. Teachers say it takes away autonomy.
The profession is not what it was in years past. If you're not trusted to do your job, then you're not going to stay in that profession.
Metro Schools agrees this is an unnecessary burden on teachers, but they need to do this to comply with a state law passed last year.
I don't appreciate what's going into our libraries. It's not good for our children, and shame on you for putting it there.
The law requires all library books to be on a school's website and for there to be a process to remove books that aren't age appropriate. But teachers say for the past 6 months, they've been confused on what to do and still are, struggling to separate rumors from requirements.
Every teacher that's contacted us has a different understanding of what they should do or what will be expected of them.
And the committee charged with creating guidelines for all school districts has made little progress. They missed a December deadline and are looking for guidance themselves.
We have gotten zero guidance from any attorneys, zero. And we're just out here as volunteers.
But the confusion hasn't stopped books from coming off shelves. Wilson County can ban a third book at their next meeting. The book in question, the 1999 coming-of-age story, Perks of Being a Wallflower.
I do not believe that the citizens of Wilson County are aware of the degree of the sexually explicit material.
But whether that material means the book isn't age appropriate in this case hasn't been decided yet. In Nashville, Adam Mincer, News 2.
President Biden says he was surprised to learn government records had been taken to a former personal office of his. The documents were first discovered in November. Ike Ajashi has more information as the Department of Justice looks into the documents.
House Republicans are crying foul, claiming President Biden's possession of classified documents is being treated differently by the Justice Department compared to former President Trump. The DOJ and FBI are looking into how a small number of classified documents wound up in a secure office space at President Biden's think tank in Washington, D.C.
They treat people differently based upon their philosophical or political party.
President Biden's lawyers say the documents were found on November 2nd last year, but the public is only learning of the discovery now. According to the White House, the National Archives took possession of them the next day. Biden now trying to distance himself from the discovery, saying he's fully cooperating.
I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office.
The DOJ is also investigating Donald Trump's possession of hundreds of classified materials. But there are key differences in how Biden and Trump responded when they learned they possessed classified documents. Trump and his aides are accused of repeatedly resisting government efforts to retrieve the documents, which ultimately led a court to approve a search warrant on Trump's Mar-a-Lago home to secure them. Still, the new GOP-led House Oversight Committee also launching its own investigation into Biden, asking for all documents related to this discovery. The White House releasing a statement saying in their first week as a governing majority, House Republicans have not taken any meaningful action to address inflation and lower Americans' costs. Yet they're jumping out of the gate with political stunts driven by the most extreme MAGA members of their caucus. When asked, Speaker McCarthy didn't mention that the government engaged in months of back and forth with former President Trump to retrieve those classified documents he'd taken. Ike Ajachi, ABC News, Washington.
Now to our This Week cover story. A new report shows children here in Tennessee are dying of child abuse while in the care of families that DCS knew had a history of abuse. The number more than doubled in fiscal year 2020. News 2's Chris O'Brien asked lawmakers what they will do to protect kids in Tennessee. One lawmaker called the governor lazy.
DCS's failure over the past few years is no secret.
And the amount of vacancies that we have is untenable. You could never even imagine that. DCS was already kind of running on fumes, and now, I feel like there's nothing left in the tank.
With session starting in less than 24 hours, the department is expected to be a big point of discussion, particularly when Governor Bill Lee finalizes his budget. Reporters asked him if he had made any changes since the comptroller's scathing audit of DCS last month.
We have proposed in the budget a significant funding for additional workers as well. Workforce is one of the greatest challenges that department faces.
Every lawmaker agrees there's a problem and the solution is more funding.
The state government always has a pay issue, so we have to fix that as a state government, and that's the first most. You can't underpay people who are in that job when they go in the private market and make a lot more, so you got to bring their salaries up.
But when that funding should come is the disagreement. Democrats have argued Lee isn't moving with enough urgency.
When children are sleeping on the floor of a state office building, because our governor's too lazy to do his job or put the appropriate resources in place to make sure those children are cared for, or they're not housed in a hospital just to keep them there because he doesn't have anywhere else to put them. That is a fundamental failure of leadership.
Whether or not more changes come outside of funding remain to be seen. In Nashville, Chris O'Brien.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. Tennessee's newest congressional member played a role in the 15 votes it took to elect Kevin McCarthy, the GOP Speaker of the House. We caught up with 5th District Congressman Andy Ogles about his support, opposition, then support again for McCarthy, who campaigned in Tennessee for Ogles. As a candidate for the 5th Congressional District, Kevin McCarthy campaigned for Andy Ogles. In return, Ogles promised his support of McCarthy as Speaker of the House. But during a rules fight, Ogles voted against McCarthy, leading to a face-to-face confrontation with McCarthy. And Ogles then voted to support McCarthy again as Speaker.
Yeah, again, we've been negotiating in good faith, and the negotiations began to break down. And so we withheld our votes to say, look, we're not going to move forward with the vote on Speaker, because I was never a Kevin McCarthy person. I like Kevin.
And with that, then you switch back over. We saw that conversation happen on the floor between you and now Speaker McCarthy. What happened in that conversation that brought you over to his team for that vote?
Well, so right after he and I had that conversation, which went viral, I think, globally, I actually voted no. And then the next round is when I voted yes. But we continued to negotiate in good faith. That was a private conversation between he and I. And part of it, too, was I'd received a text the night before where I had been threatened by a very wealthy donor from someone I'd never met. And part of that was him just saying adamantly that he had nothing to do with it. He does not approve of that, and he was apologetic in that about that event.
Ogles sees opportunity for bipartisanship in certain areas.
There is an opportunity, though, I think, to get some of that passed, because you're going to have a lot of Democrats in swing districts that are going to be forced to take tough votes because their district is middle of the road. It's not left, it's not right. And when you're in a recessionary period, an inflationary period, people want to see things getting done. And look, when you look at the southern border, the fentanyl crisis, that's a bipartisan issue. So getting to work on that is important. We're going to put forward the Texas plan about securing the border. And when you have college kids in South Dakota, or you pick a state ODing on fentanyl, suddenly every state in the country is a border state. And like I said, when you look at the numbers across the country, border security is an 85% issue, meaning 85% of Americans understand that it's a problem.
Ogle says focus needs to be on stopping the flow of fentanyl and securing the border.
Look at how can we break the supply chain of fentanyl? How can we break the supply chain of drugs coming into this country? And the other part of this too is, there's a humanitarian crisis taking place at the southern border. So maybe you don't care about drugs. Maybe you don't care about the economic impact that the southern border has on our country. The very fact that 60% of women and children that come across that border are sexually assaulted, that should bother everybody. And we've got to create a system by which if someone wants to come here legally, they can go through the process and have a fair shake, fair opportunity to try that. But at the end of the day, this is our nation. We get to decide who comes here. But by closing the border, you're going to slow down and stop that flow of people coming into this country.
Ogles has some ideas of which committees he would like to serve on.
But as one of the economists up here, anything to do with the budgetary process, typically a freshman's not going to get on a Ways and Means. So either the Budget Committee, Appropriations, or Financial Services would make sense. But then also with my background in human trafficking, to be on a Judiciary or Foreign Affairs would make sense. But we'll see. I could be in the broom closet, but I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. Welcome back to This Week. Big corporate news as the governor announced California-based In-N-Out Burger is going to establish a hub in Middle Tennessee, bringing with it about 250 jobs. The governor was also asked about abortion, executions, and more. Governor Lee welcomed a new Department of Correction commissioner this week, Frank Strada, former deputy commissioner of the Arizona Department of Correction. He will be in charge of formulating the new execution protocols.
Really grateful and excited about Commissioner Strada and his expertise in correction through the Federal Bureau of Prisons and in other states' correctional departments. It's leadership that we're excited about having. He certainly will be responsible for ultimately and oversee the protocol that must be put in place before we can move forward. I have not, he was just sworn in yesterday, so there's a lot yet to be known about what direction that'll take.
What would you want to see out of that protocol, if anything specific?
I think that's for the experts to decide and to weigh in on. There's a lot of expertise around the country and how to do this right, how to do it correctly. We want to make sure that we do it right and that we do it correctly and look at best practices across the country.
The governor was asked if he would sign legislation exempting rape, incest, or the life of the mother from the state's near total abortion ban.
The session's just getting started. There's a lot of proposed legislation, so I'm not going to comment on bills that may or may not come to my desk. I will just say about that subject that it's really important that we protect children, the unborn. It's really important that we provide for the protection of a mother in serious maternal health condition situations. It's important that we provide for families going forward. But with regard to the law as it currently stands, I'm satisfied with it.
Governor Lee did not dispute legislation to reduce the Metro Council from 40 to 30 members was political payback for the council not offering to host the Republican National Convention, but rather that the idea had merits.
Again, I'll have to look at specifics around bills, and I'll be asked about a lot of pieces of legislation that are proposed that I haven't seen yet, so it's really not the thing to do to comment on that. But I'll say about that subject in general, 40-member caucuses are on a council, a 40-member city council feels unwieldy to me. I think most people think that that is a very large, and relative to other cities of the size, it is unwieldy. So, it's certainly not a bad thing to look at.
And another corporate gain for Tennessee as In-N-Out Burger is bringing a hub and 250 jobs to the state.
In-N-Out Burger coming to Tennessee. Big news today. Very exciting. Another great national company, iconic name, making a decision to create a hub in Tennessee, the only hub for In-N-Out Burger in the eastern half of the United States. So we're celebrating that today and excited about their decision to bring jobs and economic development into our state.
Stay with us. This Week continues in a moment. I want to thank you for spending part of your weekend with us. That will do it for another edition of This Week. We hope to see you back here next weekend for another edition of This Week. Between now and then, you have a great week.